I've always believed that life is a series of patterns, predictable if you squint hard enough. My name is Daniel Hawthorne, and for the past 12 years, I've built a life with Claire, my wife, in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Portland. Our house, a modest two-story with ivy creeping up the brick, was our sanctuary. We had routines: coffee at 7 a.m., her yoga class on Wednesdays, my late nights at the architectural firm sketching designs for buildings that might never exist. We were comfortable, maybe too comfortable, but I never questioned it. Not until the patterns started to fray. Claire was radiant, even after a decade together. Her auburn hair caught the light like a flame, and her laugh could fill a room with warmth. She worked as a curator at a small art gallery downtown, her days spent surrounded by abstract paintings and eccentric artists. I loved that about her ability to see beauty in chaos, to find meaning in splashes of color that looked like nonsense to me. She'd come home with stories about quirky clients or heated debates over brushstrokes, and I'd listen, sipping wine, feeling like the luckiest man alive. But lately, her stories had grown sparse. She'd come home quiet, her eyes distant, her phone buzzing more than usual. I chalked it up to stress. The gallery was struggling, she'd said. Budget cuts, fewer visitors. I didn't push. It started with small things. A me-said dinner date because she lost track of time at work. A new perfume I didn't recognize, sharp and musky, clinging to her clothes. The way she'd tilt her phone away when she typed, her fingers moving too fast for a casual text. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I trusted Claire. We'd built a life on trust, hadn't we? But doubt is a weed, and once it takes root, it spreads. One evening in late September, I came home early. A client had canceled, leaving me with a rare free night. I thought I'd surprise Claire, maybe cook something together like we used to. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, her car absent. Odd, but not alarming. She'd mentioned a gallery event, hadn't she? I texted her. A simple, "Hey, home early. Where you at?" No response. I poured a glass of bourbon and waited, flipping through channels, the hum of the TV filling the silence. An hour passed, then two. By 11 p.m., my texts went unanswered, and her phone went straight to voicemail. I tried not to panic. Maybe her battery died. Maybe the event ran late. But the bourbon wasn't calming the knot in my stomach. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared cloud account, something I hadn't done in years. We'd linked our calendars and photos there ages ago, a relic of our early days when we were obsessed with documenting every moment. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe a calendar entry for the event, something to explain her absence. Instead, I found photos, recent ones, uploaded from her phone. The first was innocent enough. Claire at the gallery, smiling beside a canvas streaked with blue. But the next made my breath catch. It was her, in a dimly lit bar, her arm around a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with sharp cheekbones and dark hair, his hand resting on her lower back. The timestamp was from last week, a night she'd told me she was working late. I scrolled, my heart pounding. More photos, the two of them at a park, laughing. A selfie in what looked like a hotel room, her hair mussed, his shirt unbuttoned. My hands shook as I clicked through, each image a knife twisting deeper. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen. The bourbon was gone, the glass sweating on the table. When I heard her car in the driveway at 1 a.m., I closed the laptop and waited. She came in quietly, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood. "Dan?" she called, her voice tentative. "You're up." I stood, my legs unsteady. "Where were you?" She froze, her purse still slung over her shoulder. "The gallery. I told you we had an event." "An event." I repeated the word, tasting its lie. "Until 1 in the morning?" Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, but I saw it. It ran late. Then a few of us went for drinks. I didn't realize the time. "Who's the guy, Claire?" My voice was calm, but it took everything in me to keep it that way. "What guy?" She set her purse down, her movements deliberate. "Dan, you're acting weird. What's going on?" I opened the laptop and turned it toward her. The hotel room selfie glowed on the screen. Her face crumpled, just for a second, before she straightened. That's nothing. That's just Marcus. He's an artist. We've been working together. Working together, I said, my voice rising despite myself. In a hotel room? With his shirt off. It's not what it looks like, she said quickly, stepping closer. Dan, please. You're jumping to conclusions. Marcus is just a friend. We were at an art fair in Seattle and… Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop. I saw the photos, Claire. All of them. She went silent, her eyes searching mine. For a moment, I thought she'd confess, that she'd break down and tell me everything. But instead, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. I'm tired, Dan. Can we talk about this tomorrow? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You're unbelievable. She didn't respond, just walked upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close, the click of the lock. I stood there, in our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built, and felt like a stranger in it. The next few weeks were a slow torture. Claire acted like nothing had happened, her cheerfulness a mask I couldn't penetrate. She made breakfast, kissed my cheek, talked about mundane things like grocery lists and yard work. But the photos were burned into my mind, and the silence between us grew heavier. I didn't confront her again, not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable, something that would force her to face the truth without her spinning more lies. I started paying closer attention. I tracked her phone's location when she was at work, noticing how often she was miles from the gallery. I checked our bank statements, finding charges for restaurants I'd never been to, hotels I'd never visited. I even followed her one evening, my car idling a block away as she met him, Marcus, at a wine bar. They sat in a corner, her hand on his arm, their heads bent close. I watched from the street, my chest tight, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. I learned his full name, Marcus Delgado, a painter whose work was featured in Claire's gallery. I found his social media, his website, even an interview where he gushed about the inspiration he'd found in Portland. I wanted to vomit. The more I dug, the worse it got. I found text messages on her phone one night while she was in the shower, a burner app she thought I'd never notice. The messages were explicit, intimate, a language of betrayal I couldn't unsee. Can't stop thinking about you, she'd written to Marcus. Last night was incredible. His replies were worse, laced with a smugness that made my blood boil. I took screenshots, saved them in a hidden folder, my evidence growing like a dark archive. But even as I gathered proof, I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed her to admit it, to see the weight of what she'd done to us. I started testing her, dropping hints to see how she'd react. Saw a story about a guy who caught his wife cheating. I'd say over dinner, watching her closely, crazy how people think that they can hide that stuff. She'd laugh it off, change the subject, but I saw the cracks in her facade. The way her fingers tightened around her fork, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I wasn't sleeping anymore. My work suffered. Clients noticed my distraction, my designs half-hearted. My boss, Tom, pulled me aside one day, his brow furrowed. You okay, Dan? You're not yourself. I shrugged it off, unable to explain the storm inside me. I was obsessed, consumed by the need to understand why. Why him? Why now? Had I failed her somehow? Was I not enough? The questions haunted me, gnawing at my sanity. One night I went too far. Claire was at another event, and I drove to Marcus's apartment, a loft in a trendy part of town. I didn't know what I planned to do, just that I needed to see it to make it real. I parked across the street, watching his windows. Around 10 p.m., Claire's car pulled up. She stepped out, her coat pulled tight against the rain. Marcus met her at the door, and they embrace, quick but familiar, before disappearing inside. I sat there for hours, the rain drumming on my windshield, my mind replaying every moment of our marriage. The vows, the promises, the life we'd planned. All of it unraveling. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop and started planning. Not just to confront Claire, but to make her feel what I felt. The betrayal, the humiliation, the loss. I didn't know how yet, but I knew it had to be cruel, deliberate, unforgettable. I wanted her to understand the depth of what she'd broken. And Marcus? He'd pay too. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about justice. As dawn broke, I sat in my office, the house still dark, my resolve hardening. The patterns of our life were gone, replaced by something jagged and raw. I didn't know who I was becoming, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't let this go. Not until they both felt the weight of what they'd done. The days after I saw Claire slip into Marcus's apartment felt like wading through a fog. Every moment was heavy, saturated with the weight of her betrayal. I went through the motions. Work, dinner, small talk with neighbors. But inside, I was a furnace, burning with a need for retribution. I didn't want to just confront Claire or walk away. That was too easy, too clean. I wanted her to feel the same gut-wrenching humiliation I did, to have her world dismantled as meticulously as she'd dismantled mine. And Marcus? He wasn't just a bystander in this. He was complicit, smug in his role as the other man. They both had to pay, and I was going to make sure it hurt. I started by gathering more information, turning my obsession into a kind of science. I wasn't just collecting evidence now. I was building a case, a blueprint for their downfall. I installed a tracking app on Claire's phone one night when she left it on the counter, her carelessness a gift. The app was discreet, hidden in a folder she'd never check. It gave me real-time updates on her location, her movements a digital map of deceit. She was at Marcus's loft 3 nights a week, sometimes more. The gallery, her supposed sanctuary, was a lie half the time. I cross-referenced her locations with bank statements, finding charges for boutique hotels, wine bars, even a weekend trip to the coast she'd claimed was a work retreat. Each discovery was a brick in the wall I was building, a wall that would soon close in on them. I also dug deeper into Marcus Delgado. His online presence was a curated performance. Instagram posts of his paintings, moody self-portraits, and cryptic captions about finding truth in chaos. He was 34, 6 years younger than Claire, with a following that fawned over his genius. I found reviews of his work in local art blogs, interviews where he name-dropped Claire as his muse. The word made my stomach churn. I hacked into his email, easier than I expected, thanks to a weak password, and found a thread with Claire. Their messages were a mix of flirtation and logistics, planning meetups, joking about keeping it quiet. One email from Marcus read, "Your husband's too busy with his blueprints to notice. We're safe." I printed it out, added it to my growing file. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed a plan, something that would hit them where it hurt most. For Claire, it was her reputation, her carefully crafted image as the cultured, impeccable curator. For Marcus, it was his art, his ego, the pedestal he'd built for himself. I spent nights in my office, the door locked, sketching out ideas as if they were architectural designs. Precision was key. I wasn't going to scream or throw punches. I was going to dismantle their lives with the same cold calculation they'd used to betray me. The first piece of the plan came to me during a sleepless night in October. Claire's gallery was hosting an annual showcase, a big event that drew Portland's art scene. Critics, collectors, influencers. It was her night to shine, the culmination of months of work. Marcus was the featured artist, his paintings the centerpiece. I'd been to these events before, standing awkwardly in a suit while Claire worked the room, her charm effortless. This year, I'd be there, but not as the supportive husband. I'd be the architect of their ruin. I started small, planting seeds. I created anonymous social media accounts, burner profiles with no traceback to me. I posted vague comments on art blogs, hinting at unprofessional behavior at Claire's gallery. I didn't name names, not yet, but I knew the art world thrived on gossip. A whisper could become a wildfire. I also contacted a few journalists under the guise of a concerned colleague, suggesting they look into conflicts of interest at the gallery. I fed them just enough to pique their curiosity. Invoices for overpriced supplies, questionable expense reports I'd fabricated using my access to Claire's work email. The gallery was already struggling financially. A scandal would cripple it. For Marcus, I went after his work. I'd learned he was obsessive about his paintings, spending weeks perfecting each one. His studio was in his loft, a detail I confirmed through Claire's location data. One night, when I knew they were at a bar across town, I drove to his building. I didn't break in, that was too risky, but I scoped the place, noting the security cameras, the lock on the side door. I found a maintenance worker who, for $200, let slip that the building's security system was outdated, easily bypassed with the right tools. I bought a small toolkit online, untraceable, and practiced on our own locks at home. I wasn't sure what I'd do in his studio, but the idea of destroying something he loved felt right. The hardest part was living with Claire while I planned. She sensed something was off, but she didn't push. Maybe she was too deep in her own lies to notice mine. We still shared a bed, though I slept on the edge, as far from her as I could. Her touch, once a comfort, felt like a violation. She tried to make conversation, her voice bright but strained. "You seem stressed, Dan. Everything okay at work?" I'd nod, mutter something vague, and change the subject. I couldn't look at her without seeing those photos, without hearing Marcus's words in my head. "We're safe." By mid-November, the showcase was 2 weeks away, and my plan was taking shape. I'd hired a private investigator, a grizzled man named Vince who didn't ask questions. I gave him the screenshots, the emails, the location data. "I need video," I told him. "Something undeniable." He nodded, his face unreadable, and quoted me a price I didn't hesitate to pay. A week later, he delivered grainy footage of Claire and Marcus in a hotel lobby, their hands entwined, her laugh echoing as they stepped into an elevator. Another clip showed them at his loft, her car parked outside, the two of them silhouetted in the window, close enough to leave no doubt. I watched the videos on repeat, my anger hardening into something cold and sharp. The final piece of the plan was cruelest, and it came to me during a meeting at work. I was presenting a design for a community center, talking about how spaces could evoke emotion. Pride, joy, shame. Shame. That was it. I didn't just want to expose Claire and Marcus. I wanted to humiliate them publicly, in a way they couldn't escape. The showcase was the perfect stage. I spent hours crafting a presentation, a slideshow that would play on the gallery's projector during Marcus's big moment. It would include the photos, the emails, snippets of Vince's videos, all timed to music that would amplify the drama. Something slow and haunting, like a requiem for their lies. I tested the tech at the gallery one afternoon when Claire was out. I'd volunteered to help with setup for the showcase, a gesture she found sweet, oblivious to my motives. The projector was easy to access, its software outdated. I uploaded my presentation to a USB drive, labeled it Marcus Delgado Showcase, and slipped it into the tech booth. The staff wouldn't notice. They were too busy hanging paintings and arguing over lighting. I also tampered with Marcus's main piece, a massive canvas he'd bragged about in interviews. I mixed a slow-dissolving chemical into the varnish, something I'd researched online. By the night of the showcase, it would start to streak, the colors bleeding like tears. Not enough to ruin it immediately, but enough to make him look like an amateur. As the showcase approached, I felt a strange calm. The anger was still there, but it was focused now, a laser cutting through my doubt. I stopped second-guessing myself, stopped wondering if I could forgive her. Forgiveness wasn't the point anymore. This was about balance, about making them feel the weight of what they'd done. I rehearsed my role, the shocked husband, blindsided by the reveal, playing my part for the crowd. I practiced my expression in the mirror, hurt, betrayed, but not vengeful. No one could know I'd orchestrated it. The night before the showcase, Claire was nervous, pacing the kitchen in her robe. "This event is make or break for the gallery," she said, pouring a glass of wine. "Marcus's work is going to blow everyone away." I nodded, my face neutral, my heart racing. "I'm sure it will," I said, and she smiled, oblivious to the storm I'd set in motion. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the USB drive hidden in my sock drawer. Tomorrow, Claire and Marcus would face the consequences of their choices. The gallery would be packed, the art world watching. And I'd be there, in the shadows, watching their world collapse. The night of the showcase arrived like a storm I'd summoned, heavy and inevitable. The gallery was transformed, its white walls glowing under soft lights. Marcus's paintings hung with precision, each canvas a bold slash of color and ego. Portland's art scene buzzed around me. Critics in tailored coats, collectors clutching wine glasses, artists with pretentious scarves and practiced smirks. I stood near the back, my suit crisp, my face a mask of calm. No one could see the pulse hammering in my throat or the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. Claire was in her element, gliding through the crowd, her black dress clinging to her like a second skin, her laugh bright but brittle. Marcus was by her side, shaking hands, his confidence radiating. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't know I'd built a guillotine out of their own lies. The plan was simple but ruthless. The slideshow I'd prepared would play during Marcus's speech, projected on the wall behind him for all to see. It would start innocently, images of his paintings, quotes from his interviews, then shift slowly at first to the photos, the emails, the videos from Vince. I'd timed it perfectly, the transition seamless, the music swelling to mask any gasps from the crowd. The tampered varnish on Marcus's centerpiece painting would already be streaking, a subtle ruin that would amplify the chaos. I'd be in the audience, feigning shock, my role as the betrayed husband airtight. Claire's reputation would crumble, Marcus's career would take a hit, and the gallery, already teetering financially, wouldn't survive the scandal. It was cruel, yes, but it felt like justice. I mingled, keeping my distance from Claire. She caught my eye once, waving me over, but I raised my glass and smiled, staying put. "Busy night?" I mouthed, and she nodded, turning back to a critic. Marcus was holding court near his centerpiece, a massive canvas titled Erosion, all jagged reds and blacks. He was explaining its emotional weight to a cluster of admirers, his voice carrying over the hum of the crowd. I checked my watch. 8:45 p.m. The presentation was set to start at 9. I slipped into the tech booth, unnoticed in the chaos, and swapped the gallery's USB for mine. The tech guy, a bored kid in a hoodie, was too busy texting to care. I tested the projector remotely from my phone, a trick I'd learned from a colleague. The screen flickered, then steadied. Ready. At 8:55, Claire took the stage, her voice smooth as she introduced Marcus. A visionary, she called him, her eyes lingering on him too long. The crowd applauded, and he stepped up, all charm and false humility. I stood near the back, my heart steady now, my hands in my pockets. The projector hummed to life and the first slide appeared. A photo of Erosion, its colors vivid. Marcus gestured to it, launching into his speech about the fragility of human connection. The irony wasn't lost on me. The slides ticked by, his art, his quotes, a video clip of him painting. The crowd was rapt, nodding along. Then, at the 3-minute mark, the shift began. A photo of Claire and Marcus at the bar, his hand on her back. A murmur rippled through the room. Marcus faltered, his smile twitching, but he pressed on, assuming a glitch. The next slide. The hotel room selfie, her hair mussed, his shirt unbuttoned. Gasps now, heads turning. Claire's face went pale, her eyes darting to the screen, then to me. I met her gaze, my expression one of practiced shock, my hand over my mouth. The slideshow accelerated. Emails flashed up, their words blown up for all to see. "Can't stop thinking about you. Your husband's too busy to notice." Then Vince's video, the grainy footage of them in the hotel lobby, her laugh echoing. The music, a slow, haunting piano piece, made it surreal, like a movie no one could look away from. The crowd was frozen, some whispering, others staring at Claire, who stood rooted to the stage, her hands trembling. Marcus tried to speak, his voice cracking. "This is a mistake," he stammered, but no one was listening. Then came the final blow. The slide shifted to a live feed of Erosion, projected from a tiny camera I'd hidden in the gallery earlier. The varnish I'd tampered with was doing its work. Streaks of red and black bled down the canvas, slow and deliberate, like a wound opening. The crowd gasped again, louder now, as Marcus turned to his painting, his face crumpling. "What the hell?" he muttered, stepping closer. as if he could stop it. The chemical I'd used was subtle but relentless. By morning, the painting would be a mess, a symbol of his failure. Claire finally moved, rushing to the tech booth, her heels clicking frantically. "Turn it off!" she shouted. But the tech guy was fumbling, confused. I'd locked the system with a password only I knew. She spun around, searching the crowd, her eyes landing on me again. "Dan?" she said, her voice breaking. I shook my head, my face a mask of betrayal, though inside I was electric with triumph. The slideshow looped now, starting over, each image a fresh wound. People were leaving, some whispering, others openly staring at Claire and Marcus, who stood like statues, exposed. I slipped out a side door, my heart pounding but steady. The night air was cool, the street quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. I didn't need to stay for the aftermath. I'd seen enough. My phone buzzed. Texts from colleagues who'd been at the event, asking if I was okay, saying they couldn't believe it. I didn't reply. I drove home, the city blurring past, and poured a bourbon. The house was silent, Claire's absence a presence in itself. She came home at midnight, her makeup smudged, her eyes red. I was in the living room, the laptop open, the screenshots still on the screen. She stopped in the doorway, her purse slipping to the floor. "Dan," she said, her voice small. "How could you? How could I?" I stood, my voice low but sharp. "You did this, Claire. You and him. I just made sure everyone saw it." She sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her words muffled. "It was a mistake. I was going to end it. A mistake." I laughed, the sound bitter. "Months of lies, Claire. Hotels, secret texts calling him your muse. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." She looked up, tears streaking her face. "I'm sorry, Dan. I love you. I didn't want to hurt you." "Too late," I said, stepping closer. "You humiliated me. You made me a fool. And now you're the one everyone's talking about. How's it feel?" She flinched, but I didn't stop. "The gallery's done. Your reputation's trashed. Marcus's career, good luck selling a ruined painting. You both got what you deserved." She stood, her voice rising. "You think this fixes anything? You think ruining us makes you whole again? You're not this person, Dan." "Maybe I wasn't," I said, my voice cold. "But you made me this person." She left then, grabbing her purse and keys, the door slamming behind her. I didn't follow. I didn't care where she went. Probably to Marcus to lick their wounds together. I sat back down, the bourbon warm in my hand, and felt nothing. Not relief, not joy, just a hollow space where my anger had been. The plan had worked, every piece falling into place, but it didn't fill the void she'd left. The next morning, my phone was flooded with notifications. Art blogs were already posting about the disaster at the gallery, speculating about Claire and Marcus, the ruined painting, the financial fallout. A journalist I'd tipped off had published a piece, hinting at mismanagement and personal indiscretions. The gallery's board was calling for Claire's resignation. Marcus's social media was silent, his website down. I'd done it. I'd torn their world apart. But as I sat in our empty house, the silence deafening, I realized something. Revenge hadn't fixed me. It hadn't brought back the Claire I'd loved, the life we'd had. It had only made the wreckage more visible. I poured another drink, staring at the photos on the mantel. Us on our wedding day, smiling, oblivious to the future. I didn't know what came next, but one thing was certain. I'd burned their world to the ground, and I'd live with the ashes.